On January 6th, Capitol Police, I believe it was Capitol Police, went door to door in congressional offices to evacuate members of Congress hours before anyone breached the Capitol building. How fortunate for these members of Congress that there was a pretext that got them out of the building. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez used that pretext to create a fake story. She claimed that the cops went to her room and banged on the door. She went and hid in the bathroom, and she heard someone come in and go, "Where is she? Where is she?" And she said, "I thought they found me. The J6ers found me." She thought she was going to die.
Is this the same person who hit Jussie Smollett with a Subway sandwich?
It was a cop evacuating her because of the pipe bombs. However, the story makes no sense because this happened, I believe, a full hour before anyone breached the Capitol building. So when this story broke, I actually ended up arguing with Ben Shapiro about it because everyone was saying, no, they were evacuating. The timeline adds up. And then I pulled her Instagram video and lined it up and said, this story she was telling about getting lunch happened. Here's the time frame she gives. Here's the video from in front of the Capitol of the first breach of the building. She had no way of knowing they were going to breach the building unless she had foreknowledge that the building was going to be breached. For those that believe January 6th was coordinated intentionally, it is extremely convenient for anyone who knows that there's going to be a riot inside the Capitol, that they had a pretext to evacuate Congress before that happened.
Yeah, and even if it was like Capitol Police getting ready to like prepare the building for the assault, so they're in there getting all the Congress people out, that could have been
a full hour before the rioters smashed through the building. They evacuated members of Congress.
I've heard that there's FBI on the scene there. You guys have the data?
This is what I want. When they're doing this J6 pipe bomber thing, are we going to get documents related to the informants that we know were on the ground?
So this is where things get really, really interesting. And I think this even ties back into why Comey and Ray and so many others are starting to get a little sweaty on camera. Whenever you start to look in these forlorn places where documents are just left to rot, they're not really closed, they're just left open. Maybe you look around in some field offices, you start to find references to things that really shouldn't be there. You do start to see whether or not individuals were listed as an FBI informant on some other earlier operation as opposed to just January 6th, and all of a sudden those testimonies before Congress look a little bit sketchy. The worst part of all of this is that the January 6th committee that was a complete sham and set up so that no one who disagreed with the problems with the situation in general couldn't even get on the committee. That committee then tried to destroy evidence that was delivered to that committee. It tried to obfuscate, to hide any kind of testimony leaking out to the public. This is something that I want answers for, because before you try to walk out here and say that everything is above board, there's a lot of people getting real jumpy about people opening up old files all of the sudden.
What evidence did they destroy? The January 6th committee. You said they received evidence that they destroyed?
So
they destroyed everything.
Yeah,
what's left? All the documents,
all of the evidence that the January 6th committee collected. Right, picture in your mind a large plastic bin, a post office bin, if you might, and everyone sends in all of the various information. You just keep it in this bin. Well, at the end of this particular investigation from the J6th committee, the Trump administration was essentially like getting ready to come back in. They dragged this committee on forever. The House was retaken by Republicans in midterm. Speaker at the time comes in and says, well, we'd like to see these documents. And they said, no. And then once they actually got the documents back, they found that the bin was like 1/3 of the way full, when in fact, we know of all of these things that occurred regarding the January 6th committee, testimonies, documentation, perhaps security camera footage. Why on God's green earth is there a part of Washington, D.C. that close to the Capitol that's not on camera? A lot of unanswered questions that are kind of a little weird here. And what, Meghan McCain was satisfied with like a Post-it note that said, I did it, signed J6 people.
I don't know. I can't imagine that there's actually places in D.C. that don't have surveillance.
Hillary Clinton's office.
Well, I'm talking about places outdoors.
Oh yes,
you know what I mean.
Outside of Hillary Clinton's office.
Yeah, outside of Hillary Clinton's, outside of offices. Just like, you know, if you're walking around Congress or around the DOJ building or around the FBI building, I can't imagine that there aren't cameras.
Yeah, there's more cameras in DC than an inner city Target.
Anywhere that Hillary Clinton looks is the only place with no camera. I couldn't get the joke in when it was timely, but it would have been funny to think she's like a Terminator shutting down security footage.
Everywhere she walks, the camera's shut down within a
just in case
15-foot radius.
I'm just chilling outside of surveillance.
Well, okay, so it's the lack of evidence that indicates that they destroy the evidence.
I mean,
can we just real quick, I know that there's not very many liberals that watch this show, and they're never going to clip this, but the Q shaman is on camera being escorted into the building through the building by police, escorted into the Senate chambers, and they locked him in prison for this. Mm-hmm. The police gave him a guided tour. How can you claim that someone had criminal intent when they said, "Excuse me, officer, can you help me?" And they said, "Yes, I can." Could you imagine walking to a bank and being like, "Officer, is it okay if I take this bag of money?" It's like, let me carry it for you. Okay. And then they arrest you. It's like, you gave me the money. Like, you let me do it. In this instance, probably a better analogy, because the Capitol building's a public building. Normally, anyone's allowed to be there.
Yeah.
So the police give him a guided tour through a public building and then arrest him for it later. Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.